I hope you all slept well. And thank you for bringing us to this beautiful place. It's unbelievably beautiful. I wish I could stay here all day. So we're going to just quickly summarize, take you through the work that we did yesterday, and then just show you where we're landing for this morning. So I think we started yesterday with the challenge of the 360. The 360 view, which came from the experience at the planetarium the evening before. And what we did yesterday was we then spent time looking at the gender declaration, and what Benno explained to us yesterday in the afternoon was it was really a synthesis of the gender declaration into the 7 principles. So I think we all have the gender declaration, of course, printed in our folders, and we have been looking at it and working with it since we arrived. So the discussions in the afternoon then went into the 3 thematic streams that are kind of contained in which we could probably call them the sort of the inner system of the gender declaration. So there's the one on civic engagement, there's the one on culture and arts, and then there's the one on education and learning. And inside the gender declaration is a lot of conceptual material, if I could call it that, conceptual tools and ways of framing these 3 areas of praxis. You could call them human praxis. And so we then, the different groups, spent some time looking at this, and it led to different kinds of responses, which were very interesting. The one type of response we did get, elaboration of recommendations for making sense of these areas of practice. And then we also had a second type of response, which was, asking questions about the assumptions and the content that is sitting inside of the declaration. And then we also had a kind of questions around the declaration itself and its positioning, I would say, its positioning in the field, because the field of sustainability, of course, is very wide. And for example, in the education arm of that, there are various policy tools and instruments that are already gaining traction and quite being actively engaged with, such as the ESD for 2030 roadmap. So there was a question about how this declaration relates to those. So we then spent the summary session in the afternoon really kind of just picking up on what was being said there in terms of these 3 areas of engagement with the gender declaration. And then, of course, in the morning we had a number of presentations, and all of these presentations were elaborating, I think, on these thematic areas, these 3 thematic areas, in different ways. And there's a job to be done in terms of, synthesizing those elaborations, I think. So what we were able to do, when we were sitting there in the morning, Daniel and I just sort of captured some of what we would call the headlines along those 3 thematic area pathways. So you can see them there. The first one at the top, which was the regional sustainability and civic engagement, and we had some really interesting points made through the different presentations. We're not going to repeat them here. And then the second one, the session on culture and the arts, again, a number of really interesting perspectives and points coming through the different presentations. And then the third stream, which was education and learning, and again, key points coming through there. So those are available on the Miro board. I think Falk will probably send the Miro board link to everybody, if you don't mind, Falk, because we would like people still to come in and maybe add to that. So then Daniel and I worked all night in summarizing. Summarizing, where are we now on this? Okay, you better at it than me. Because Benno told us, no, we have to come with something clear in the morning. So Daniel very brilliantly woke up this morning and made those 6 little stickers, and he said, this is actually what we were talking about, so I'm going to hand over to him and he can start.
Exactly. We tried, thanks a lot, Taylor, for walking us through the journey. And we tried to capture what was discussed in this sense of what is now an agenda for moving forward. And I think that could be a we then labeled it yesterday already, or start labeling it as a roadmap for implementation of the Jena Declaration. And we summarized kind of the discussion for us, and this is also, maybe you can then also say whether this resonates with you or whether it doesn't resonate, on 3 levels. So we had a feeling that one area that was discussed that is kind of maybe even above the Jena Declaration. So that is really the question of embedding and connecting. And Benno, I think it was really important what you also now did today and yesterday, to embed it, where does this come from? To clarify where does it come from, to be aware that where does it come from, and then connecting, and I think this was this idea what Taylor already mentioned with regards to connecting it to ongoing programs, to make it, to feed the information, the spirit of the Jena Declaration into the ESD for 2030 program, into other programs that are ongoing, so that the spirit really gets into the ongoing programs, and that we really make it, through connecting it to the different programs, even broader distributed in the community, and make it more impactful. So this was one layer. The second layer, and I continue, Pela. The second layer was really then concerning the concrete declaration, and I think it was, in the discussions, it was very clear, and Benno, you made this also clear, that it's not about rewriting the Jena Declaration, but we heard 2 aspects related to the Jena Declaration. The first one was really the critical engagement and clarification of it for different contexts. So it was not the idea to really now go through it, rewrite the Jena Declaration, but really have this critical reading and trying to understand, make sense of what are the underlying principles, to then strengthen the text through a better understanding of the text. So this was one area directly related to the declaration, and the other one was this idea of translating to different contexts. So finding the right words to talk to people outside our academic bubble, to talk to the youth, to really make these ideas and the principles tangible for these different contexts. And then we saw a third layer, which was really then kind of what are we now doing as what is needed as next steps to further flesh out the Jena Declaration. And there the idea was really then to say, well, operationalizing, and different groups brought very concrete ideas. How can we now really make this place-based idea of the Jena Declaration? How can we really make this happen, listening to the people in the context, etc., etc. And the other one, and I think we have particularly in the presentations, we have a lot of material there, is really examples, making the principles alive, and really say, well, what does this mean in a specific context? Which examples do we have where we already worked in a transdisciplinary way, where the arts kind of contributed to make a sustainability contribution in a specific place? And that, Hela and I, so this is now then the question also to you, really had the feeling that if we now write, and this is the we is now the first step is for Benno and Falk, but then also together. No, I can't zoom again. But if we would translate this and use all of the rich material we have from the discussions, from the presentations, and really translate this in a roadmap. And I really like this idea of a roadmap, that it's not a memorandum, it's not a codex or whatever, but it's really a roadmap, a way forward, outlining what are the next steps. If this could be the outcome of this conference, I think that would be really a very tangible, helpful next step for making the Jena Declaration impactful. And Hela already started drafting how something like this could look like. But this is now the place where we would say, well, we would hand this over to Falk and Benno, that you flesh this out with the material that was gathered during this conference, and send it back so that people can complement, and then hopefully we will really be able to not only sign the Jena Declaration, but also sign on for a roadmap, what to do with the Jena Declaration. And I think if we manage to do this, we really made a major step forward. So this is it from our side, and if there are voices, people who want to complement or think, well, this doesn't make sense at all, this would be now the possibility where you could just share your thoughts with us. But at the end of the day, we were somehow happy.
You can see we worked all night. Yeah, I think that also just the purpose here is to not produce something that closes down, but rather something that opens up. So to open up the space for critical engagement and clarification of key concepts. We could see yesterday that was necessary, and it will be necessary all the way through. Even 10 years from now, people will still want to be doing that. And then also, supporting the translations and the communications. And then, because that makes it a living document rather than a set of things that everybody has to adopt. And I think for us that was very important, coming from also the discussions yesterday about the importance of reflexivity when we're working in these spaces, and how to advance this work, because it's unknown, and so one needs the open, reflexive social processes to make something like this come alive. So we're leaving you with that, Benno, as the task for your team going forward, I think. And then we thought if anybody wanted to add anything right now, we could still take those notes and add them in, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe some further reflections coming up yesterday during the dinner, or after the dinner, maybe some more ideas.
I think in the bus, Deepika was saying, what about a sort of timeline for review again, so a few years from now, when will one review this, what has been learnt from this iteration or this system? I don't know, Deepika, do you want to speak to that a bit?
Having some kind of a review, what have we achieved, how many people signed, especially if it's strongly hinging on implementation. So what implementation has taken place, some kind of a milestone that we have, that we work towards something.
Yeah. No, of course. I mean, thank you very much. This is really great stuff.
We hand it over.
So now we can continue the collaboration we started here. For the ones they are interested, of course, that's free. And then we will do a report, and you will see the report constantly by the changing of the manuscript. Maybe we can put a Google Doc where we can work on the text, or maybe that's not appropriate because we are too many. We have to see how we do it. And then you can comment, can add. I mean, in the discussion in our small group, we had a lot of things we didn't write down. And thinking now, I guess Thomas and Raminder and I and Falk could add something more. And maybe that's the same for others in the other two groups, to add additional points. And then I think the idea is, as it has been put by Jerry Jacobs, that we need a kind of a global movement to change the strategy established so far, or to add to these strategies by the cultural and the social dimension, and to make the process, to speed up the process by improving the adoption of sustainability programs and ideas. Hela?
I had one thought last night, and I don't know if Alicia could maybe help us here, but it's this process and it reminds me so much of what was happening with the Earth Charter a number of years ago, which was a sort of ethics system of, you know, trying to elaborate the possibility of shared ethical space for sustainability. And I'm just wondering also what the relationship might be between this and that. And also what can be learned from the process of working with the Earth Charter and a process like this. Because these are both, you know, very, what you call it, deep social processes that we're talking about here. So I was just thinking it might be interesting to explore that. Yeah.
So the key idea is to launch really a movement, like a snowball effect, if possible. We started slowly. Now we have about 500 signatories of organizations, individual people. And the idea is to have pretty soon 5,000. And then, so I think until autumn we should have 1,500, until the end of year 5,000, something like that. And as soon as you have a certain number of signatories, the media will pick that up. The media don't help you when you start a declaration, because they say they don't engage in a political process. So all refused sending the announcement of the Jena Declaration. And some were calling me up and said, oh, it's very interesting, but we can't do that. We don't do that by principle. And also organizations have difficulties sometimes to sign. But the more that have been signing the declaration, the more it becomes interesting for the media, because they are reporting about something that is happening and they are not part directly to engage in the declaration. So that seems to be the logic. I didn't know before. I learned that in the process. And I think to have it as broad as possible. So far, many artists have signed in their individual name. Some there are ateliers or working groups, organizations. I mean, the Club of Rome, World Academy, and so on. Also, all major international councils of the humanities have signed. That's quite something. So the lawyers are still a little bit outside, but if you have them as well, so that could maybe speed up the whole process also in the legal area. And we have the network of the Italian UNESCO-Chairs that were one of the first signatories of the Jena Declaration, and the Coimbra Group, the 31 oldest universities of Europe, except Oxford and Cambridge. They went out for economic reason. They can't afford to be member of the Coimbra Group, apparently, and so on. So you have quite big organizations that are signing, and also individual people, smallest groups that are signing. Goethe Institute, for instance, yeah, with all its 150 partners worldwide, if I remember correctly.
I just had a question also. Did you also maybe enter in a critical dialogue with official development aid? And because we had an interesting discussion this morning with colleagues about consultancy, and that actually culture, and I've read this also in studies, and for example, knowing the language is less and less appreciated in this consultancy work that is so popular now in development aid, for example, and also the German agencies are really into a very much like management approach in development aid. So I think a critical dialogue in this direction could be also very important, actually, and maybe helping also the agencies, actually.
So launch a critical debate of the current practices.
Yeah,
that would be
that go
point.
more and more
Yeah.
actually in a neoliberal direction,
Yeah.
not into a cultural
Yeah.
approach,
Yeah.
which is worrying, actually.
Okay. Okay.
Respond a little bit, Alicia, from following what Hela was saying about the Earth Charter, because as well with the Earth Charter we also ask for well, not ask, but the process makes institutions, etc., to sign. So we call that as a commitment with your charter. So we can share a lot with you how is the process, because following up, like after you get to 1,000 is very difficult, right? But I think what is key, one thing that attracts is a lot, is about connecting, like for example, what is the essence of the IANA Declaration with practices, with cases, so that's what people connect. So that's what we try to do with some charter principles, with stories. Okay, how are you really implementing this? So that's something that is really, really important. So that would be my one suggestion, and of course we can maybe later on follow up to see how we can connect better these two documents. And another thing that we've been trying to promote through a group that is working with the Earth Charter in Spain is in terms of how we can use stories, legends, narratives, traditional stories, through storytellers to convey the principles of the Earth Charter, because sometimes you have this document and it could be very difficult for someone. We were talking about how can anyone could really grasp this, but through a story, everybody likes the stories, and they really, so they are with this group in Spain, they're trying to, and they're joining people from Scotland, creating a network of storytellers, so that they will bring these ideas of these ethical principles into villages, to everyday people, but through stories. So maybe that's something that's part of the arts, that you can also include the narratives, traditional stories. We'll share that with you.
Yeah, we try to do that. We engaged in storytelling, but in the group we were not gifted enough to do it properly. It's quite a challenging task. And the second point that turned out when we tried to do that before we launched the declaration in October last year, was that you have to embed it in different cultural contexts. So you can't just tell the same story and translate it. You need to have for each cultural context another story told. And that's, of course, as you said, a network of storytellers. And you need it, if you really want to touch ground, then you have the translation in as many languages as possible. That's quite a complicated thing, because the vocabulary is not in every language filled with the same meaning, even if the word is strictly translated. So, and then you need also specific stories to be told for different groups, for children, for young people, for adults in different professional fields and so on. But that's the perfect, we identified that as the perfect way to do, but we haven't succeeded to implement that idea. So
we'll share that.
Perfect.
This link is stories, Earth Stories collection.
Yeah. Okay, I have two mentioned and three. Is your name and then Pastor?
Yeah, Pavlos. Here is a practical suggestion as a response to the roadmap. These 3 articles we see over there. How about organizing? You'll think of the format, whether a seminar, working group, on internet-wise or live, but in the following way, making 1, 2, 3, each one the topic of discussion, and having the other 2 as parameters to the discussion. Like, for instance, a seminar on clarification and translating. Discussing the issue fully, and then bringing to the attention of the people participating or including in the text as parameters number 1, number 3. The same could happen with a focus on 3 and using parametrically 1 and 2. That could yield important feedback to this idea and a follow-up to the work that has already been done.
Just to that, in addition, I like these three levels and the idea of the roadmap. And sticking to the first level, I'm thinking about contexts for embedding and connecting. And maybe we could collect some contexts. I raised two contexts yesterday. One was Mondia cult, facing Mondia cult, how Jena Declaration can be part in Mondia cult. And the second one was the OMC group. I'm connected with that. Maybe these are two contexts, and we should think about more contexts where we can embed Jena Declaration. And I do support what Pablo said, thinking in the roadmap of a kind of workshop or seminar. It's just 1 hour we are thinking today about these points, where we meet concrete to work out some of these things.
To summarize the two statements, we will prepare the ordering of the arguments as suggested by Hela and Daniel. Falk and I will do that over the next weeks. And then we can focus on the 3 steps and organize online meetings to discuss these points, and as many people as possible can join. We will organize the Zoom, and then we can put that into a document, the results, and disseminate, and then to the next step, and going along this way. Perfect. My colleague from the working group, cultural dimension.
Yes, thank you.
Dimension.
Right, thank you. The GD is very new to me. I don't know. Thanks, Catherine, for suggesting me to join in. And then I found it very interesting, especially coming from International Islamic University. Back home in our institution, we're trying to push for more of religion and spirituality role in this sustainable development. My question is whether because we are now seeking for entry point of pushing for a stronger role of religion and spirituality. I don't know whether we can use this as a platform, as an entry point, so that we can have more stronger arguments to put up role of religion in sustainability. That's one point. And second one is, I guess this is quite new into the area, I mean the Southeast Asia, and culture and religion is something that is very critical, very important, significant role there. I guess if I can freely promote this and get an engagement and further engagement, so that we get more signatories, and for our purpose is that to push for that religion and spirituality argument.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, we can't name the different areas of the cultural worlds too specifically, because if you name something very specifically, you exclude others. But what you can do is to give a specific interpretation of mindsets and all the things that are mentioned, what that means for your context, you know? So schemes of interpretation, so you can translate that, what that means in the Islamic world, and especially also in Malaysia, and so on, so that people can understand what the impact is. And I think this is meant by translating downwards, across, and upwards, translating in all directions. So giving a specific meaning of the rather complex, abstract concepts. And you have to have them in a certain abstraction, otherwise you are excluding too many things you can think of. Nora, and then Falk, and then Raminder.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. Only 2 words. The first one is we are speaking about different contexts. According to me, I am speaking as architect also. It is important to specify very well which is in the context. That is not only these subjects, but to specify what is people or population or a local community or society. Because when we have to share what we are defining now, we have also to specify which are the, I have to say, which is the aim of our speeches, and with whom we have to compare our thoughts, because it is important. We are speaking a lot, and also the international documents are speaking a lot about local communities. What are our local communities when we speak about the regional level? So only this suggestion. The other one is, I would like again to bring the wishes from the network of Italian UNESCO-Chairs. Thank you so much for this invitation, and I want also, on behalf of them, to ensure our collaboration. Thank you really to all of you.
Thank you. So I would like to pick up on a point Benno just made, the different layers of translation involved, and what I think could be added to these 3 points, or at least said more clearly, is that apart from, as it says here, sharing the Jena Declaration, supporting critical engagement of its principles, and sharing the TJD principles and translating them into different contexts, I think it's essential to also make clear that it should happen the other way around as well, so that there's a constant process of what happens in these contexts, this engagement, what people there do, think, know, their situation, that this also feeds back into the operation of the Jena Declaration, so that it's a constant process of dialogue, of collaboration, so that what we keep developing is also informed by the people themselves, and that way we can, the intention to apply this bottom-up approach, that we also live it in real time by doing that constantly.
Thank you, Falk. Raminder? Because we are recording this.
Okay, thank you for crystallizing all our thoughts onto one page from yesterday. That's great work. I have a point about operationalizing and praxis. So support reflexive operational engagement. I think 2 words that are missing there are creative and participatory. And I have a little bit of a problem with operational because it implies you're operating on something or on some body or on some culture or some group. And so you may want to rephrase that term. And I think how you could think of the arts not just as representation of major problems, crucial issues, but as an integral part of methodology. So the arts are integrated into the methodology and become a form of communication. An example is to work with an illustrator, for instance, along with social scientists, other kinds of scientists and humanists, etc. And that illustrator then becomes, you don't need words or language for this necessarily, that illustrator works with all of us, or other people, young people in particular. Most people can draw, even if it's doodles and stick men and stick women. And through those kinds of exchanges, you can create or co-create something very interesting which hits on an issue which is crucial to that context and relates to sustainability. And then you can create scenarios and possible solutions, even if it's in a fictionalized territory. And that can actually be implemented and has been done in some cases. So I think it's just to open up these terms a little bit more and be careful about some which seem a bit impositionary. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we did, in the International Year of Global Understanding, we had drawing competitions in different schools. You had from India, a Montessori school, they produced 25,000 drawings on the idea of global understanding. And they had an exposition around the country, and this was really bringing accelerating the idea and make it well known in many areas of the society we didn't think before. Yeah. Okay, if there is no other proposition, then I would announce the break for half an hour so we can exchange, and we should start quite on time in a half an hour, because after that the program is quite packed and we want to be sure that the session of the German Commission for UNESCO can start properly at 12 o'clock so that you have the time we assigned in the program, and then that as many as you as possible can participate in the lunch before some have to leave already. So thank you very much and enjoy the break.